to show you a series of projects whereby artists and practitioners of a variety of kinds have aestheticized the Google critique, made it into an object of aesthetics. The types of critiques that I'll take you through are rather classic ones. Yeah? You may have heard of them. I don't know if you've ever heard of them all together in one set. But there are things like the objects and subjects that Google brings into being. Things like the dark web, or attention deficit disorder, or the data body. I'll talk a little bit about one of the major critiques these days of Google. That comes from the library scientists. It's called Googleization. I'll talk a little bit about what you could call Google's information politics. That is to say, how rankings have politics. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about critiques that go with Google licensing and the terms of use of Google when you use Google. And then finally, as a bonus, I'll show you what the title of this talk is, and that is moving beyond Google critique and actually using Google to show what's happening in society. A Google object is something that Google brings into being. And the first one is the dark web. Now, this term largely came out of a study, or a couple of studies in 1998, 1999, when researchers found that the search engines were indexing only a small percentage of the web. So they were indexing something like 30% of the web. So what about the rest of the web that's not being indexed? This was referred to as the dark web. ADD stands for attention deficit disorder. So what Google arguably brings into being are users who are impatient, who don't look beyond the first page of results. So what are the reactions? How has this particular critique been aestheticized by artists and practitioners? The fact that people don't look past the first few results. It's a project that was carried out by some artists at the Piet Zwart Institute in Rotterdam. It's called Schmoogel. And the slogan of Schmoogel is that all results are equal. So you type into a query into Schmoogel, and what Schmoogel does is randomize the results. In some sense, it's also a classic critique of how Google results increasingly show only the establishment at the top, and the critical voices or the alternative voices are buried. Google, in some sense, is participating in or reinventing or pushing further surveillance society. So your search engine query history is being stored, all your queries. And traditionally, what is being stored is your IP address and your queries, and because of your IP address, your location. Enter Scroogle. Scroogle is a project. It's more of a sort of critical practitioner project, not so much an art project, more critical practitioner project. Scroogle is very interesting because what Scroogle does is it does not allow your search engine query history to be stored. The way sites are censored, there are two ways, basically. There are blacklists, so sites have been identified as being unworthy, and then they're blocked. There's a blacklist. The URLs are blocked. And the more sort of clever means of censoring is also to censor on keywords. So if a particular keyword is in a site, then that site might be censored. And that's far more difficult to do, it takes a lot more work. But it's one thing that is done on occasion in China, quite unevenly, but it is done. And that has to do with Google licensing. Now, it is, I don't know if you've ever looked at the Google license. Yeah? So the terms that you agree to when you go to that page and you type in a query and hit go. The first thing is that you promise to look at Google only through the Google interface. Right? So you break Google's terms of service if you use Schmoogle or Scroogle. The second one that's important for what I want to talk about next is that you agree not to save the results. So in the issue dramaturg, that's also breaks the terms of service. You also agree not to save the results, and you agree not to create derivative works. That is, taking the results and visualizing them differently. How can you move beyond Google critique, and how can you move beyond the aestheticization of Google critique? That is, critiquing Google and then making it an object of aesthetics, and it making it into an art project. What I'd like to show you is a project recently completed where we take Google results and we show what's happening in society on the basis of these results. So we don't use Google results for information, but rather we look at them as reflections of what's happening in society. The name of the project is Rights Types. And the question that we asked is, can we take Google and turn it into a machine that tells us what's going on? Okay. So what we did is we took all the various Googles, right? So there's not only google.com and google.es and google.fr and google.de and google.nl, but there's something on the order of 140 of them, I believe. Local domain Googles. Yeah? And we got a group together, also unlike yourself, and we asked what languages everyone could speak. And we found out that we had something like about 20 or 25 languages, and we translated the word rights into each of the various languages and queried them in all the local domain Googles. So here's the Moldavian Google, for example, .md, and that's the translation for the term rights in Moldavian, and those are the results. Yeah? And then we did this for many countries. And what we then do is we read the results. Yeah? And we read the results very specifically. We pick out the type of rights that are mentioned. We take out the first 10 of them. Whatever kinds of rights this country, according to Google, is concerned about. What kind of rights? So you see here in the second row, there's Moldavia. The first type of right type that came out of Google was human rights, then children's rights, authors' rights. Yeah? So you get a hierarchy of rights per country.